Before this story even really begins, do me a small favor. If you've ever rooted for the underdog, tap like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the end, because what happened in that boardroom changed more than one life, and you won't believe how it all started. The sound of the laptop shattering cut through the executive floor like a gunshot. Conversations froze. Coffee cups hovered midair. 12 board members stared as the CEO's sleek, silver laptop slid off the polished conference table and smashed onto the marble floor. Standing there, pale and shaking, was Ethan Cole, the night janitor. A single dad, a man who was never supposed to be seen, let alone heard, on this floor. Ethan hadn't even been on the executive level yet. He was supposed to be emptying bins on the floor below, counting the minutes until his shift ended so he could make it home before his daughter woke up from another nightmare. But his supervisor had called in sick, and Ethan was covering extra floors. When he pushed his cart into the boardroom to quietly clean the trash before the meeting, he didn't know the CEO had returned early. He didn't know the room would suddenly fill with powerful people, and he definitely didn't know that one wrong step would send his life spinning. The CEO, Marcus Hale, stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" he snapped. Ethan dropped to his knees instantly, hands hovering over the broken machine like he might somehow undo the damage. His voice trembled as he apologized, again and again, explaining he'd lost his footing on a wet patch from the rain outside. No one listened. To them, he wasn't a man with a mortgage, a grieving heart, and a 6-year-old daughter waiting at home. He was a janitor who had just destroyed something expensive. Security was called. HR was mentioned. Lawsuits were hinted at. Ethan's thoughts raced not to the cost of the laptop, but to Lily, his daughter, whose asthma medication he could barely afford as it was. He had taken this job after his wife died 2 years earlier, juggling night shifts so he could be present during the day. He scrubbed floors with aching hands and read bedtime stories with the same care. This job was everything. Then something strange happened. As security bent down to pick up the broken laptop, the screen flickered back on. Cracked, bleeding light through spider-webbed glass, but still alive. A folder popped open automatically. The room fell silent again, this time for a different reason. On the screen were files labeled with internal project names the board recognized immediately, except these files weren't supposed to exist. Marcus Hale's face drained of color. One of the board members leaned forward, squinting. "Why are there offshore account records on your local machine?" Another noticed spreadsheets detailing layoffs that hadn't been announced, alongside bonus structures that told a very different story from the one given to shareholders. The room shifted. Power dynamics cracked just like the screen on the floor. Ethan tried to back away, mumbling that he didn't see anything, that he just wanted to leave. But the chairwoman raised a hand. "Wait," she said, eyes fixed on the screen. "What exactly did you do before it fell?" Ethan swallowed. "Nothing. I bumped the table." An IT director rushed in, reconnecting the laptop to a projector. What spilled across the wall was worse than anyone expected. Emails, plans, proof of deliberate misconduct. The boardroom turned into a courtroom in minutes. Marcus tried to shut it down, shouting about privacy and legality, but it was too late. The evidence was there, and it was undeniable. Ethan sat forgotten in the corner, heart pounding, until the chairwoman turned to him again. "Mr. Cole, is it?" she asked gently now. "You may have just saved this company." He didn't feel like a savior. He felt like a man who was about to be fired and possibly sued. He whispered that he didn't want trouble. He just wanted to go home. What the board discovered that morning led to an emergency vote, an internal investigation, and Marcus Hale being escorted out of the building before noon. News broke within days. Stocks dipped, then stabilized. Whistleblower protections were discussed, though no one had technically blown a whistle. Except, somehow, Ethan had. A week later, he was called back to the building, this time during the day. He wore his only good shirt, hands sweating, convinced this was where the consequences would finally land. Instead, the chairwoman and several board members stood when he entered. They thanked him. They apologized for how invisible he'd been treated. Then they offered him something he hadn't expected. Years before becoming a janitor, Ethan had studied computer science. Life had interrupted, marriage, illness, loss, but the skills never left him. The files on the laptop hadn't gone unnoticed. He hadn't opened them, but he had recognized their structure, their significance. The company needed people who understood integrity as much as systems. They offered him a paid training role in compliance and IT support, flexible hours, and full benefits. Ethan cried, not quietly, not neatly. He cried like a man who had been holding his breath for years and finally realized he could breathe again. That night, he tucked Lily into bed and told her that sometimes accidents weren't punishments. Sometimes they were invitations. She asked if he still had to clean floors. He smiled and told her he'd always clean up messes, just different kinds now. The story didn't end with a miracle promotion or overnight riches. It ended with something better. Stability, dignity, proof that doing your best, even when no one is watching, matters. Proof that even the quietest people can shake the loudest rooms. So if you've ever felt unseen, remember this: the moment that feels like your worst mistake might be the one that finally tells the truth for you. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that their life can change in an instant, sometimes starting with a single, shattered screen.